Actually, people say I am the best boss they've ever had. The world's greatest boss.
I think that pretty much sums it up.
My job is to speak to clients on the phone about quantity, whether we can supply it to them, whether they can pay for it. And I'm boring myself just talking about this.
I hope they get rid of me, because then I might actually get off my ass and do something. Because I don't think it's many little girls' dream to be a receptionist.
They go, God, you're hilarious.
They go, Michael, we have never worked in a place like this before.
I auditioned like everybody else.
Let's try Philip Seymour Hoffman and Paul Giamatti, Patton Oswalt, Bob Odenkirk.
Sometimes we probably play hard when we should be working hard, but that's probably my fault, but fire me.
Paul Giamatti and Philip Seymour Hoffman were offered the role, but both passed, and for good reason. At the time of the audition, Carell was filming Anchorman.
Rudd pulled me aside and was like, don't do it, man. Don't
I'm
audition.
sure.
Don't audition. It is like, there's no way.
And we were watching the British Office like everyone else and loving it.
Gareth, he's all in the meeting. Formal introductions.
Hi, Gareth.
Welcome. Just a handshake, that's fine. And Ricky.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
Even longer. You, Tim. Hello.
And I remember they were going to make the American version, and everyone was like, this is a terrible idea. No one can be as good as Ricky Gervais.
But Carell went against his better judgment.
And I thought, I will suck. This will be terrible.
The auditions were very different than any other show I'd ever auditioned for. They were more of a workshop.
What is queso Ross?
Well, it's kind of a non sequitur, is what I've been told.
He said to try to make the rest of the cast laugh, you know, to sort of go off script and improvise and just keep everybody happy.
I've only watched about less than a minute of this office
The number bods. Do not be fooled by their job descriptions.
because I had not seen it prior to auditioning for the American Office, and I started to watch a tiny bit.
They are absolutely mad, all of them. Especially that one. He's mental. Not literally, obviously, that wouldn't work.
And I knew instantly that if I watched any more, I would just do a copy of Ricky. And I didn't want to do that because
I was intimidated by him because his characterization was so good.
I knew I could never, ever come close to that level.
Carell interpreted Michael Scott in his own way.
I believe he goes home at the end of the day and prepares his comedy bit. I think he lives for that.
Could you come in here, please?
Hi, Jim.
It's not that he is intrinsically racist or homophobic or sexist. He just doesn't have a frame of reference. He's not capable of understanding.
If I had a gun with 2 bullets and I was in a room with Hitler, Bin Laden, and Toby, I would shoot Toby twice.
And once he does glean some understanding, he misinterprets it.
All right.
I would kill Bin Laden and then Toby. If he even caught a glimpse of who he really is, his head would explode. But I think, at least the way I feel about the character is that he has a decent heart.
I'm really proud of you.
And he's just trying his best. It's not a pyramid scheme. It's not even a scheme per se.
I have to go make a call.
I'm a sales rep.
I was a waiter at the time.
I'm a sales rep, which means that my job is to speak to clients on the phone about quantity and type of paper, and if we can supply it to them and if they can purchase it. And I'm boring myself just talking about it.
John Krasinski originally came in for the role of Dwight.
I actually wanted to join the US show because of the UK show. It was my favorite show ever. And I said it was so perfect.
And one slip-up was about to cost him his dream job.
Everybody went to lunch and they came back and a guy was sitting across from me eating a salad and he said, "Are you nervous?" And I said, "No, because you either get these things or you don't. What I'm really nervous for is whoever's making the show, because they're just gonna screw it up." And he's like, "My name's Greg Daniels. I'm the executive producer." And I was like I actually threw up in my mouth.
There was a lot on the line for Krasinski, since at that time he was ready to quit acting altogether.
I was like, so I'm out. This is terrible. It's so scary.
And luckily, his mom talked him off the ledge.
And she said, it's September. Just wait it out. Just wait till the end of the year. Don't give up just yet. I was telling her to come get me.
And with nothing to lose, he convinced the producers to let him audition for Jim instead of Dwight.
And 3 weeks later, I got the office. Oh, also it is Thursday, but Dwight thinks it's Friday, so keep that going.
Yay! Jim's advice was that it's better to be at the bottom of a ladder that you want to climb than halfway up one you don't.
That line likely resonated with the actress just as much as the character.
It's hard to watch your friends who have chosen a more conventional career path do things like get married and have nice dishes and have nice sheets, and then you still sleep on a futon mattress on the floor 6 years out of college. No one hands you a career in this industry. Like, you have to make it for yourself.
And to get the role of Pam, she would end up doing something that made her stand out from everyone else.
It was a big room full of people.
There was no script. He just said, we want you to act like Pam or your idea of Pam.
But I remember Jenna was there with the other actors.
I auditioned for the role of Pam, and I went in.
Frankly, I spent the first month trying to remind my boss that there is no Y in paper.
And I thought I did so great. There's a moment where Michael is fake firing Pam to pull a prank, and Pam starts to cry and calls him a jerk. And I called him like a jerk, and everyone started laughing. And I was like, I don't think that was supposed to be a laugh. So they said I didn't get the part because I was a little too feisty for Pam.
While other actresses leaned into comedy, Fisher did the opposite.
I gave very short, one-word answers. I tried very hard not to be funny.
Jenna was sort of sitting off by herself and very quiet. Everybody else was very chatty, but she was kind of off alone, and she was so quiet. I thought maybe she's not an actor. Maybe she really thinks she's here to get a receptionist job.
I don't know what I'm gonna do.
But that was her plan. That was what she said. She wanted to, weirdly enough, just be as unassuming as possible because she knew the role required. Nothing showy, nothing acty. She even said to me that, she wanted to kind of be as boring as possible.
And then, of course, you see this vulnerable moment that Pam, as much as she hates that job, she needs it. And Jenna did such an amazing job portraying that.
Hey, Dwight, Jim and I found your wallet in the parking lot.
What did you do to it?
If you're in the field, you can clean the man's wound by taking a whiz on it. That is actually in first aid books.
I'm trained in this from being a sheriff's deputy.
I'm not afraid of violence in the workplace either.
Urine is sterile, okay? That's a fact.
I was a theater actor for 10 years in New York before I did any TV or film or anything like that. I watched every episode of the BBC show. I kind of feel like my grandmother could play Dwight. You know what I mean? She had the little flip and the thing, and anyone can do it.
Question. What kind of bear is best?
He's so singular looking and odd in his own way, and I'm obviously a little bit singular looking and odd in my own way.
Did you know that? When you are in the field, you can clean a wound by whizzing on it.
He's talking about how Dwight has this adolescent love of hierarchies, and that's always stuck with me. And if I ever get a little ungrounded in a scene, or what am I playing here? Adolescent love of hierarchies, right? And I'm right there.
I am promoting you from assistant to the regional manager to assistant regional manager.
Michael.
I really think that for me, it really started with the haircut and picking the right glasses and the short sleeve shirt and the calculator watch and everything.
I'll say it's a little bit frightening how easy it is for me to write Dwight Schrute. I'll say that.
And we'll leave it at that.
Put my stuff in Jell-O again. No. Do not take it out. You have to eat it out because there are starving people in the world, and which I hate.
Undisciplining. Oh, kinky.
Now's the time to start putting Gareth's first possessions in jelly.
And while I was at the BBC, I had to do a training exercise, and the official exercise was to make a short documentary about a real documentary. And I said, well, how about I make a fake documentary instead with my friend Ricky?
What would become The Office actually started out as a short film.
So I'm a professional. Professionalism is, and that's what I want.
While we were working together, we had a sort of collection of observations about the kinds of people you work with in offices. So we sort of mushed those all together. David Brent character who came out of Ricky almost fully formed.
You haven't passed your forklift driver's test. Has he passed his forklift driver's test? He gives the tests.
And before we knew it, it started to get a kind of cult following. We didn't sit down to think, how can we make a show? It just grew out of this.
There was a lot to love about this version of The Office.
This concept of a no-laugh track faux documentary had a universality to it in kind of that dead-end workplace.
But with its long stretches of silence and a protagonist who wasn't remotely likable.
She said to me wearing a white chiffon scarf to help me spot her. So, for
It catered to its British audience in every way, not a US one.
And it was like, guys, the English Office isn't going anywhere. You can watch it over and over again.
Didn't really think it would ever be on American television.
And then they said, do you want to do an American version? And of course, we just thought, well, that's never going to succeed.
They screw up all good British shows.
And even Ricky and Steven, who originally, had some concerns.
And yet, NBC bought the rights.
I thought it'd be cool just to meet those guys. And then it turned out that they were big fans of American television in general. And specifically, if they had really liked an episode that I had written of The Simpsons.
As usual, I'm winning and not realizing it.
They were both very, very positive and encouraging of everything that I wanted to do. And they had already created the template. I was hired to adapt their work.
That adaptation was greenlit for 6 episodes, where Daniels was loyal to the source material, especially the filming style.
Every shot choice should reinforce the illusion that there's a documentary crew catching by chance the day-to-day lives of the paper company employees. So if a scene begins with Michael Scott coming out of his office, I would aim the camera in the wrong direction, away from Michael's office, forcing the camera operator to scramble and, quote, find the action as it unfolds.
While the filming style did adapt to a US audience, one aspect clearly didn't.
And I was too respectful in the beginning of the British version.
If you watch season 1, it's very drab. It's very dark. It's darkly lit. People don't have any makeup on. We're poor.
And the one thing that worked the least was Michael Scott.
Yeah, there's good things about Michael. He's yeah, definitely.
There was nothing likable about him.
This is Roy. Roy dates Pam. You know, the best looking one upstairs? Yeah. You still getting it regular, man? I mean, I can tell her it's part of the job.
There's nothing like American television about it whatsoever.
They kept saying, come on, make your own thing. I look at it like a clock, and you take the top off and you get in there and you figure out all the gears, and then you can recreate it. But then there's a second step, which is to change it for the country that you're in. And I didn't change it.
After we finished our first 6 episodes, I didn't think we were coming back, and I went home and I cried for 2 days because I thought I was never going to see these people again after
Our pilot was the lowest testing pilot in the history, I think, of NBC.
I went back to waiting tables because I was sure nothing was going to happen with it.
We were almost canceled every week. Yeah.
But something started to change towards the end of season 1.
That when the staff got together and started breaking the rest of the stories, having seen Steve Carell and Jenna and John and Rain and caught glimpses of all these other people, it was easier to picture Steve in the role and not Ricky. And it became much easier to...
Steve does his hair a little better. We're wearing a little nicer suits. The set gets a little warmer in the way that it's lit. Michael Scott became more likable in a way. It was the Halloween episode where you see just Michael Scott handing out candy to children and just loving it. And just to see that, like, Michael Scott's got a big heart. You know, he's a doofus and he always says the wrong thing, but you know, he's a lovable guy.
Greg and I really responded as we saw this opportunity for a character and an American actor to kind of create a new Archie Bunker.
You know, that color guy that was here before. Oh, no, don't worry about that. He's one of the good.
The whole show kind of lives in this very edgy space around the office and around issues like race and class and sexual orientation, and it does it all through comedy, very much in the way that Archie Bunker did 35 years ago, and there's not anything else really exploring those themes.
One of the first episodes, when we broke away from the British version, it was called Diversity Day, where we put stickers on everybody's heads with things. I think my sticker said Martin Luther King Jr., and they labeled everybody. One person had black and one person person had Caucasian and
Jamaica and Jewish.
Olympics of suffering right here. Slavery versus the Holocaust. Come on.
But I remember the Christmas episode.
Of that, yes, of season 2. But that was because they put it on the iPod.
We were the #1 downloaded show on the iPod. And then we were like, well, we might have a job for a while.
The comedy was finally landing, but there was still one key element missing that the show would need to achieve longevity.
Hey. Hey. You can go. That's fine.
Emotional stakes. And the chemistry between Krasinski and Fisher started well before their on-screen romance.
And they brought in Jenna, and they said, we just want you to read with this girl. And the moment I sat down with her, I was like, oh, this girl's gonna get it. And so we were walking out, and I was like, you're gonna get this part, I know it. And she goes, that's so weird, I think you're gonna get the part. And it just felt that weird metaphysical thing where you're just like, this is really cool. And the first question I asked when I got the part was, did Jenna get the part?
Pam's favorite flavor of yogurt, which is mixed berry.
And she said, that's the first question I asked too. So
Jim said mixed berries? Oh, wow. Yeah, he's on to me.
So it was like this weird thing going already.
But for me, chemistry is when you have to work the least to be most authentic as your character. So when I met John and I worked with John, I didn't have to try at all.
But audiences had more than enough will they, won't theys.
The really hard part for me was that without our real knowledge or consent, they were promoting the season premiere as the ending of this casino night romance story.
Last May, he laid his heart on the line.
I'm in love with you.
To the woman engaged to someone else.
What's going to happen with Jim and Pam and this lush ad campaign with violins and everything?
Leaving us to wonder what happens next.
It's all writers 100% all the time. I mean, these people committed to this relationship as being super dynamic in its own way and also extremely subtle in its own way.
I was seeing these ads and I knew what we had coming.
I have no idea how long I wanted to do that.
Too.
They don't write for rating, they write for what's real for the character.
But they needed to give their supporting cast the same treatment.
I did a lot of journaling in the background, and I wrote my grocery list in the background because our computers didn't work for the first 2 seasons. They were props.
Their placement in the background also meant that many of them felt one note. Angela was stiff.
Sometimes the clothes at Gap Kids are just too flashy.
Kelly was boy crazy.
Would you talk to him for me and see if he likes me? Please, please, Jim, please, please, please.
Kevin was dumb.
I wrote it on my hand, but then I washed it.
There are a lot of kind of incidental characters too, which we hope over time will develop.
But time wasn't a luxury they had. Steve Carell was already the office's biggest name, and his film career was about to explode following season 1.
Are you a virgin?
Oh, you are hilarious.
You're a virgin!
The 40-year-old virgin.
He was such a big movie star, so of course he's going to leave the office when he can.
It was just a question of when, and the show would need the supporting cast to step up.
Greg asked for a meeting and thought he wanted writer-actors on the show. So I joined us both at the same time.
Even from the pilot, we had the actors come up with their own stuff a lot of times.
I heard about The Office. I lobbied and I went and I wrote my own character and I gave it to Greg Daniels. And a few days later, they came and said, it was just very funny stuff. And then I got that first shot with the Halloween episode. With Steve Carell.
The more people can take different roles in the production, the more it becomes like a handmade and not a factory-made product.
EJ one time asked me if there was like any sort of significant story from my childhood could lead into a Pam story.
Sort of like it was SNL or something, where writers act.
And over time, each character did become an icon in their own right.
You know, we kind of crush it at middle schools. I was touring a middle school and they were like, can you not go in the classrooms? Because the kids were like,
they were distracted.
Now that we're like 10, 12, 15 years out, it's like, I just want that again.
Yeah.
Like I want to go back to that. We didn't know how rare it was.
Yet with Carell's departure after season 7,
we knew it was coming for a long time.
there were big shoes to fill.
How are we telling these stories without, the comic engine of the show, which is Michael Scott, and without one of the greatest comic actors in American history at the center of our show? It was a little bit chaotic of trying to figure out the tone of the show and who's the lead.
So they tried to replace him, but ultimately found Carell to be irreplaceable. And it's hard to exaggerate how popular he was with fans.
Yeah, we were at a baseball stadium, and there was a big surprise. We had an extra seat. Greg Daniels said, "What's the extra seat for?" And they introduced Steve. He came out, and I've never heard a sound like it. It sounded like a jet engine. People went bananas. A lot more bananas than they do for the Yankees.
The writers knew that bringing back Michael Scott for the finale would be the ultimate redemption.
Michael, I can't believe you came. That's what she said.
It was such a classic thing to set up a situation where he could say that, and the characters were acting like it was the most profound emotional interaction that he could say when it's just that's what she said.
And the fact that they kept Carell's return a surprise only added to the impact. And over the years, the show has only become more popular.
Based on any metric, now it is the most watched show in television.
And as for its legacy, given its quotable one-liners,
Occasionally I'll hit somebody with my car, so sue me.
And moments of wisdom, it's no surprise that the more we watched it, the bigger it grew.
That's what she said.
I'm Adam. This is ScreenPuff. If you enjoyed this, check out this next video. And as always, thanks for watching.